I'm Fernanda Leite. I'm the Vice President for Research at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm so honored here today to welcome you to Texas and to the University of Texas at Austin as we get the second annual Industrialized Housing Summit started today. Thank you for traveling from across the country and for some of you from even farther away. I know some people came from Korea to join the summit here today. So thank you for being here. And this summit really promises to be an important conversation about the future of housing. At UT Austin, we're proud to host this gathering because it reflects something we believe deeply in, that the world's most complex challenges are solved not by one discipline or organization or sector, but by bringing together researchers, industry leaders, government partners, and innovators across many different sectors to solve these challenges, such as the housing challenge that we face. And across Texas and our nation, communities are struggling with housing affordability, limited supply, workforce shortages, and the increasing demand for resilient, sustainable communities. These are economic challenges, they're infrastructure challenges, they're workforce challenges, but they're also research challenges. And universities have such an important role to play in these challenges, not by simply studying these problems, but by developing and testing ideas, technologies, and developing the workforce that will help solve these challenges. That's one of the reasons why this summit feels so at home here at the University of Texas at Austin. Our university has been a long partner and a long leader in engineering, construction, manufacturing, computer science, robotics, artificial intelligence, and advanced materials. Increasingly, we're bringing these strengths together in new ways to rethink how we design, manufacture, construct, and operate the built environment. And researchers across our campus are developing robotics for construction, digital twins that improve project delivery, automation that enhances productivity and safety, and advanced sensing technologies and AI-enabled decision support systems. Individually, these are exciting advances, but together, they represent the foundation of a new generation of construction, one that is more efficient, more resilient, and ultimately more capable of meeting society's needs. And industrialized construction, industrialized housing specifically, sits squarely at the intersection of these innovations. If we're serious about improving housing affordability at scale, we must also be serious about improving how we build. Traditional construction methods alone cannot close today's housing gap. Industrialized approaches offer the opportunity to deliver quality housing faster, more consistently, and more cost-effectively, making home ownership and affordable housing more accessible for families and communities. But speed is only part of this story. The ability to rapidly deliver high-quality, repeatable construction also has implications far beyond housing. I know we have military and defense partners with us here today, and many of the capabilities being discussed over the next 2 days, rapid deployment, scalable production, resilient supply chains, and advanced manufacturing are equally relevant to national security and installation infrastructure. It is another example of how innovation in one domain can create impact across many others. This is why gatherings like this matter. They create opportunities to share ideas, challenge assumptions, build partnerships, and accelerate innovation. They also remind us that the future of construction will not be created only by a single organization. It will be created through collaborations across academia, industry, government, and the communities we ultimately serve. Before I close, I want to thank everyone who helped organize this summit and all of our partners who made it possible. Bringing together such a distinguished group of experts and leaders is no small undertaking, and we appreciate your efforts. To all of our speakers, panelists, exhibitors, and attendees, thank you for being here and for contributing your expertise to this important conversation. I hope you have a productive and engaging summit, make new connections, and leave with fresh ideas and new partnerships that will help advance industrialized housing and the future of the built environment. Welcome once again to the University of Texas at Austin, and thank you for joining us. Hook 'em horns. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Professor Chris Rausch, who will continue our opening program.
All right, well, good afternoon. And before we start, I think we all owe each other a round of applause for finding this location, I will say. All right. There's nothing quite like having a plan that has to get kind of interrupted in the last kind of mile. So thank you for bearing with kind of the confusion that you may have had in trying to find this location. There's probably something to be said here, an analogy to maybe how our current construction industry approaches things. You know, we like to think we've got plans, but those plans, we seem to change them like at the last minute. And so I think with the Industrialized Housing Summit, we got to move beyond these last minute changes. So I won't belabor the point, but thank you for being here today. My name is Chris Rausch. I have the honor of being the director of the Enabling Technologies for Housing Innovation Center. It's a mouthful, so I just go by ETHIC for short. I'm also an assistant professor here at the University of Texas. I want to spend a few minutes to just kind of walk through a little bit of the organizing team behind this summit. I like to just cast a bit of the vision for what ETHIC is, what we do, before kind of getting into why we're here for a Industrialized Housing Summit. So I've already given the breakdown of the acronym. So ETHIC is the Enabling Technologies for Housing Innovation Center. We started as an organization roughly 3 years ago as a HUD Center of Excellence. So thank you, Todd, as being kind of a representative of HUD for that support over the last few years. We have some amazing partners that we work with through ETHIC. What makes us unique, I think, is the fact that we have both academic partners such as the Texas Southern University, Virginia Tech, as well as UT Austin. So we've got academics that are involved in this housing center, but equally, we also have great industry support through ADL Ventures. And so one of the unique things with our housing center is we're able to kind of blend this academic side of looking at problems, big challenges, with this industry perspective and finding ways we can marry solutions together that are not simply theory, but they actually break through to practice. And so that's our hope and kind of mission as a center, is that we would develop products, policies, and enable people to move forward on important issues with respect to housing. So how that looks and works really is a matter of a few different technologies that we focus on. So we look at digital twins at the urban development scale. What brings us all here together is a second project focused on industrialized construction, which I'll kind of elaborate further on. But we also specialize on technologies with respect to circular economy. So with industrialization, our group is very well convinced, and I'm sure you would all agree with this, that industrialized construction is simply a better way of building. With all of the pressures that we face with respect to cost, with respect to workforce, with respect to looking at the incoming demand that is before us, we simply cannot afford to build the way we have. We have to look at a new model. And I say new, but really it's not a new model. Industrialization has existed for many, many years, but I think it is simply a better way of building. So with industrialized construction, there's a lot of different potential definitions that you can look at. And one of the simple ways of breaking this down, if this is something that you're hearing of for the first time today, is really trying to transform the way we build from looking at a traditional site-built, craft-based approach to having more of a manufacturing mindset, to bringing in these manufacturing principles and technologies that ultimately allow us to target better scalability, better speed, and better quality. So these are some of the key advantages that industrialization offers. However, as I'm sure that you can all attest, industrialized construction today faces many challenges as well. And one of the things that really is central to our vision with this summit is to try to understand what are these grand challenges that we all face. We might have in the room 3D volumetric modular construction companies. We may have 2D panelized companies. We may have 3D printing companies. In fact, this morning we had one of our site visits was to Icon, a 3D printing company. We may all have different types of technologies, but what brings us together is this kind of view of industrialization and the fact that we probably have some shared pain points. We probably have very similar challenges on one hand, at the same time as also having some unique challenges. And so what we want to achieve with this summit is actually maybe a new way of looking at the structure of a conference. Before getting into that, some of the things that we're active in the center is looking at developing research products to address some of these big problems. And so some of the recent work that we've done has looked at taking a unique perspective to what does it take for the Texas market specifically, being based here in Texas, to develop solutions that are unique to the Texas market. We're also looking at national solutions. And more recently, our team has been able to collaborate with organizations such as the Society of American Military Engineers on looking at how do we bring industrialization techniques to military applications. And so with this as well, we kind of get to why we're here today. Ethic is proud to support and put on the Industrialized Housing Summit. And I'd like to kind of just walk through what we feel like makes this summit maybe different from your typical conference. We want to structure this to not simply be something that you show up and you listen to some engaging conversations and maybe walk away with a few new ideas, but we want you all to participate. What we've done as part of the way we've structured the summit, and I'm going to skip forward here, is looking at addressing 6 big transformational questions over the next day and a half. We've dedicated panels that are specifically looking at what are the 6 big challenges that we face as an industry. And we've done, I like to think, a good job with an organizing team to bring together unique experts to help answer and address these questions. And so I'd like to kind of run through these before we kind of get into the format and structure for the next day and a half, just to kind of set out the vision of what we're hoping to achieve with this summit. So the 6 big transformational questions that our research has really pointed to over the last few years is as follows. The first is, when does industrialized construction truly outperform our current model of site-built construction? How do we channel demand into factories? Balancing demand and our capabilities for manufacturing can be very challenging. So how do we do that properly? How does AI transform how we build? Can we trust AI? And where is it best positioned in our housing delivery process? Another question is, how do we restructure the financing and lending models that are going to enable IC to work properly? We're going to have to finance things probably different. So what are those strategies? Second to last here is vertical integration the only required model to really make IC scale and be successful? Can we take on a distributed, horizontally integrated approach as well? And what does that look like? And finally, what are the overall required roles for developers, builders, and factories? Who should own what? And what should we kind of maybe stop trying to do to make this work properly? So this is quite a charge, I would say, to look at these 6 big transformational questions. And my hope is that you would all participate. Maybe you're not all speaking on a panel, but we've been really intentional with how we're going to moderate these to really get your engagement. And I think later on in this opening remark, we're going to have Todd Richardson help us with some engagement. So we'll get to participate in something in a moment here. But one of the final things that I want to briefly kind of note, that's been an amazing opportunity for myself as a researcher, and what I hope that you can all walk away with are some of the successes that you are all going to have over the next day and a half on building new partnerships and new relationships. Since we started this summit last year, we've had a tremendous outpouring of people who want to say, hey, I want to work with you. We recognize the challenges we face need to be worked on together. And so we've had amazing partners such as Rocket Homes, who's donated some housing units that our research team and students have been able to look at, work on, and think differently about how we build, in particular, deeply affordable housing products. We've also had our partners from Fornitos do the same and donate 2D panelized products that we've been able to integrate into our classroom. And so that's been I'm just going to share my own personal experience through the summit from last year. And then finally, we have Brighthaven, who's a new nonprofit that's looking to bring attainability to off-grid solar solutions so that people who are recently unhoused that become housed have access to attainable energy systems that are off-grid. So these are a personal note to some of the outcomes from last year's event. And my hope for you all is that you find your own successes over the next day and a half so that your successes can also be our shared successes. And so with that, I'm going to invite up to the stage Alyssa, who's going to run through more of the logistics for what the next day and a half looks like. But once again, I just want to thank you all for being here and congrats on finding location.
Wow. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Fernanda. It's hard to follow after two exceptional speakers who, as lecturers and professors, are essentially professionals themselves. I am not a professional speaker, so bear with me as I get through this. I am Alyssa Watson. I'm from ADL Ventures, and I'm one of your hosts for the Industrialized Housing Summit this year. I've had the privilege of working with many of you who are speaking, moderating, partnering with us, and just attending this year's summit. It's incredible to have almost 200 people in the room here with us today. You'll likely recognize my name from your email inbox. And so for those folks, it's great to meet you in person. And for those of you who remember me from last year, welcome back. Excited to have you. I'm going to spend the next few minutes giving you a sense of who is here, where we're headed, and who helped make this summit possible. So let's take a look at who is in the room with us today. We have over 200 attendees representing 150 different organizations across the housing delivery ecosystem. Our largest group represents manufacturers, fabricators, and suppliers, but they're joined by contractors and builders, architects and engineers, developers and owners, technology providers, capital and advisory partners, researchers, industry associations, and leaders from the government and the military. The important part to me about this mix isn't the volume of any one of the bars. It's about the mix. It's that nearly every part of the delivery chain is represented in the organizations that create and aggregate demand, to the people who design and finance projects, to those who manufacture, regulate, procure, build, and operate those projects. It's an intentional mix. It's one of the things that makes us different from other industry conferences. We've got incredible diversity here. And that's because industrialized construction will not scale through a single technology, company, or sector. It will require people who normally encounter the challenge from different directions to build a shared understanding of the problem and ideally find new ways to work together, as Chris mentioned through some of the case studies of partnerships from last year. So, throughout the summit, we encourage you to be candid, ask specific questions, share real examples, including lessons from projects that did not go as planned. Introduce yourself to someone from outside your circle, and look for partnership or conversation that can continue after we leave Austin this week. One last note about who's in the room. Our staff are wearing yellow lanyards. If you need help with anything, feel free to flag us down. I likely have the answer, but if not, I will find someone who does. So let's talk about what the next day and a half is going to look like. For the rest of today, we'll remain here in the main Zlotnick Ballroom for 3 important conversations. We'll begin with the future of demand, and with what may be one of the strongest demand signals this industry has seen from the US military. And if industry can build the capacity to serve that demand, the impact will extend well beyond military housing. At 3 p.m., we're going to take a networking break for 30 minutes. We'll see you in the registration area where you were earlier today for some light snacks and refreshments. And rumor has it, we are serving root beer floats, so get excited. When we return back to this main room, we'll turn to the future of supply. First, looking abroad at what the United States can learn from international experience, and then looking at home to explore what the next generation of American housing production could look like. Our formal program will conclude today at 5 p.m., followed immediately by a networking reception and happy hour made possible by ICC. Tomorrow, there's a lot more moving pieces. We'll be in the main room. We're going to separate into breakout rooms to answer 6 big questions, as Chris noted, but I will be back on stage tomorrow to walk you through where to be at any given time. So don't worry about that now. If you do want to look at the rest of the program, we have QR codes on all of your name tags, and they are also on the agendas. Before we move on, I want to recognize the organizations that made the Industrialized Housing Summit possible. You'll see our sponsors identified by stickers on their name tag. So make sure they're blue this year. So make sure that you say thank you to them for making this possible. You'll see their logos up here. Their support has enabled us to create something a little bit different and take a risk on this conference and bringing you all together in Austin. It's allowed us to combine site tours with working discussions, bring public, private, and academic sector leaders into the same room, and build meaningful time into the program for people to meet and form partnerships. And thanks to Autodesk, we're recording every session at IHS, and we'll be publishing it online. If you want to be notified when the recap and the videos are live, you can scan the QR code on your agenda to subscribe to our Substack channel. We are deeply grateful for all of the sponsors and industry partners represented. Their support reflects a shared belief in what IHS can become, not simply an annual event, but a sustained convening point where academia, government, and industry can work together on the practical conditions needed to deliver industrialized housing at scale. So please join me in a quick round of applause for our sponsors. So far, we've heard from UT Austin about the research and academic foundation behind Ethic and the Summit. In later sessions today, you'll hear about industry's perspective on both supply and demand. But for right now, I'm going to welcome Todd Richardson from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to talk about the federal level and an interactive game on the Road to Housing Act. So get ready. Please welcome Todd.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm Todd Richardson. I have a very long, very government title. I'm the General Deputy Assistant, Chris never gets this right. I'm the General Deputy Assistant Secretary in HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research, which means I'm the senior career official at the research office at HUD. Now, that's all very helpful, but the person you actually need to know for the work we're doing here is standing right there. This is Mike Blanford. He's director of our Affordable Housing Research and Technology, and they're the folks that fund and do all of the work in the housing technology business as part of our office. All right, so last year I gave a presentation here, and it was really long. It was very boring. It had a lot of data. And so I closed with a really long joke. It's probably the only thing that people remember. Who was here last year? Okay, if you're here last year, do you remember the long joke? The punchline was 10 ants, tenants. Does that ring a bell with anyone? You remember that? Okay, yeah. Ask when you, if for other people who are here, you can ask the other folks about that little joke. But so anyways, I'm not gonna tell that joke again. Because my presentation last year was so boring, my presentation's been limited here a bit to 10 minutes. And I thought that the way to make this less boring is rather than that I ask you some questions in the form of a game of trivia. So the game of trivia is going to be about the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. So I've divided this group into three. There's A, B, your middle group, and C, that group there, all right? And so we'll get to that in a second here. It'll be helpful if you actually, when I say Road to Housing Act, if it means something to you, you're going to be important to this presentation. But anyways, for this trivia contest, I have a prize. So I have historic coasters from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. From my Office of Policy Development Research, they have URLs that don't exist anymore. But the HUD building, we're moving out of the HUD building in Washington, D.C., a historic structure. It was built, actually, it was the first federal office building built off-site. The window units for the building were cast off-site in New Jersey, and they were brought down and they were placed. And it was built like Legos, because then the double T, so they had these floor pieces. There were these double T built like bridges. They sat on top of those window units, which are load-bearing. So you build the building like Legos. So that old historic building, it's on the historic registry. Out of it, I found, as we were clearing out the closets, as we were moving out, because we've moved to Alexandria, to a nice new building in Alexandria. So these historic coasters, which you'll treasure for life, all right, these are the prizes for this contest that we're going to have here. To get this game kicked off, I first want to ask, how many of you know what I'm talking about when I say the 21st Century Road to Housing Act? How many people know what this law is? It had a very long news cycle because the president didn't sign it. And so it made the news for quite some time. And all of us who work in housing had to pull out our constitutions to find out that it became law. So it is actually law. And so there's a lot in it. This is the first major piece of legislation that we've had in about 30 years in the housing supply business. Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act was in 1990. So it's been a long time since we've had a major statute of this. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to ask Team A the first question. And then, so you get 1 point for getting it right, a -1 for getting it wrong. All right? So we're going to Team A, you get the second question, Team B. C, you get the third question. And then we'll have a fourth question that folks can raise their hand and see if they want to answer it. We'll see who's going to win this contest. Remember, this is for coasters. Okay. The overarching 21st Century Road to Housing Act has 59 sections that are each essentially their own standalone statute. How many of these does HUD need to implement? So we don't have to implement all of them. How many does HUD need to implement? Well, maybe we have to implement all of them. I'll just give you guessing here, but okay, Team A. Is it, wait, all right, I'll give you some choices. Question, is it A, 12? Is it B, 37? Is it C, 59? All right, you guys figure this out. What do you want to do? A, B, or C? 12, 37, or 59? B is correct, 1 point. Mike, can you get this thing? Well done, 1 point, right? All right. Now, like I said, it's been 30 years since we've had a major bill like this, and it brings, and actually, so it brought together lots of pieces of legislation that have been kicking around a long time. So there's quite a bit of work in this for HUD. We have these 37 things we have to do, but we didn't get new staff for this. This is an authorizing bill, so we didn't get funding for it. So be patient with us. We're getting a lot of questions. Actually, my phone has been ringing off the hook. When are you going to do this thing? This law just passed. So we're still working on it. But anyways, we are working on it, but be patient with us. All right, Team B. Of those that HUD needs to implement, how many have deadlines that are established for 6 months or less? Congress helpfully didn't provide funding, but they did set deadlines. So there's how many of this? Okay, so your options are A, just 2 of those 37, 13 of those 37, or 25 of those 37. A is 2, B is 13, and C is 25. All right, team, anybody, what do we got here? You guys want to work it out? A C, all right, you think it's 25. The answer, thankfully, is not 25. It is 13. -1 for Team B here. UMP. Okay. All right. So now let's see here. Yeah. All right. So question 3 is for Team C here. You ready? You guys ready? All right. Of those sections that HUD needs to implement, how many are pilot programs that require appropriations? All right, you ready? Your options are A, 9 of those 37 actually are new programs that require Congress to actually appropriate funds, 15 of them or 25 of them. A is 9, B is 15, C is 25. Team C. So what do we got? This is what'd you win for A? A is correct. You got it. All right, 1 point. All right, we have a tie between Team A and Team C. We have a tiebreaker here, but 1 point about this is an interesting thing about these pilot programs is that, a lot of this was authorized, right? So authorized doesn't mean there's money. So authorized does not equal appropriation. So we'll be waiting to see if that happens if we get funding. But those include, by the way, some statutory changes that you might be interested in. One is point access block buildings, a temperature sensor pilot program, a whole home repair act, the Innovation Fund, an Accelerating Home Building Act. So you don't know what I'm talking about unless you've read the act, but these are all new laws that push money towards building stuff. Those won't happen without appropriations. All right. The tiebreaker question. This is the question that you're going to have to say, each team here, right? You're going to have to raise your hand. Whoever raised their hands first, and Mike's the judge here, is the one who gets the answer first. Okay, you ready? But this is one you might know. What section of the act removes the chassis requirement for manufactured housing? Hey, Mike, who? Okay, well, no, all right. I'll give you some options if you want. Section 107, Section 301, or Section 1001. You can't play. This team? 301. All right, so this team, you're the winners. Okay, we have a winner here. Can you pass these out to the winning team there? Historic coasters there. All right, so Sections 301, Section 302, and Section 303 of the Act, if you have not read them, if you're in this group, you probably should, because Section 301 removes the chassis requirement for manufactured housing, and it clarifies that HUD is the agency to set energy standards and not Department of Energy. Section 302 is intended to make FHA multifamily financing easier to use for modular housing construction. And Section 303 updates HUD's mortgage lending standards for manufactured housing. All things that might interest people in this group. All right, so that's my game, the game of trivia. Thank you for participating. And so the last part of this is if you have questions for me at HUD. And do we have time? Have I used up all my time yet? Yeah. So if you have questions for me, now I may not actually be able to answer the questions. We're very early on implementation here, but we're really right now in listening mode, trying to hear from the industry what they think we should be doing as we implement this act. There are a lot of provisions that we just talked about, and so we're trying to get input. And so as you pose questions, you might pose it with what you think, and then I might say, that's interesting, so I'll write it down. So anyway, if anybody has questions about what we're doing here, so we have people up front here.
Thank you. I just was wondering what drove the decision to remove the chassis. Is it improvements in our logistics in our industry, or what drove that?
So what drove the decision to remove the chassis I think the idea is that the whole reason the chassis existed was because you could move the house, and that sort of said you could move the house so a single national code could apply, that the federal government could have a preemptive code. I think there was a realization that you don't need to have a chassis to actually move a box, so that that was sort of the motivation there, and to expand the acceptability of manufactured housing in communities by removing the chassis, which makes it look different than other houses, was a major motivator there.
Menno Hilbert, trivia question for you. Any idea what the ratio is between your annual budget and American spending on pets?
How much money we spend on housing in this country and HUD's annual budget?
No, HUD annual budget compared to how much Americans annually spend on their pets, their dogs and cats.
Oh, it's funny you should ask that question. So we have a national survey called the American Housing Survey. I'm actually not going to answer your question, but I'm going to answer it with a different answer. The American Housing Survey we conduct, which is a national survey about housing, tells you about the housing quality in the United States. We do it every couple of years. We actually ask people about how many pets they have. And so we had asked this question in 2019 about pets, what kind, dogs, cats. And then we asked it again after the COVID in 2024. There was a dramatic increase in pet ownership in this country. I believe dogs. People have more dogs than cats, by the way, if you're interested. Anyways, look at the American Housing Survey if you want that. I do not know the answer to your question, however. It's twice?
Twice. So they spend twice as much on pets as we spend
On HUD's budget? Oh, okay, there you go. All right, thank you. I don't get any coaster. Yep.
She asked me to introduce myself. My name is Cam Valgardson with Irontown Modular. We're a factory. I'm wondering which, you told us there's 37 items in the bill. What's the priority for HUD? Which ones are you guys going to focus on first?
Well, there's a few that actually have really fast burn deadlines. So the one that has the shortest deadline is, HUD has long ran a program called the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program since the 90s, but it was never an authorized program. It was always funded through supplemental appropriations. Well, that received authorization under this act. And so in the very first deadline we have is related to that program with, we have to write a notice that says, if there's another disaster, what's the formula we're going to use to allocate those funds to communities? So these deadlines that are in the bill are sort of pushing us towards things. So there's a number of early deadlines. So that's what we're going to be doing some focusing on. But we're already starting to look at the manufactured housing. That's very important to us. So I would say that these early deadlines and probably the manufactured housing work are our highest priority at the moment.
Good afternoon. Jill DeHaven with Collier's Commercial Real Estate Brokerage. Is there a budget or a plan to build a marketing media campaign to help the general public understand what modular housing is?
That's not that I know of, so no. Seems like a good idea, I'll write it down.
We've got time for a few more questions. I'm going to jump here and then over to you.
Sarah Tarelka with Modutize. What becomes the primary difference between manufactured housing and, say, factory-built housing now that the chassis is not a part of the manufactured housing?
I think that's a critical question that I don't think we know the answer to at this point. I would say that's where the conversation with this change to the law, that's one of the conversations we need to be having. So to the extent this group has an opinion on that, we'd like to hear it.
Hi, Nick Ferran, UT Austin. I was interested in some of the more creative, policy proposals you've seen at the federal level that sort of help smooth permitting for these types of products, and even how you go about doing that at the multiple levels that permitting occurs, even all the way down to like the HOA level. And then also like at the code level where they're kind of improving all these codes all the time, which makes it, I think, hard for the industry to keep up with those different aspects of code improvements.
So just the question is about how to keep up with innovations in permitting and code changes. Is that?
How to try to smooth the permitting for these kinds of products.
Oh, I see. Smooth permitting for industrialized construction projects.
Yeah, because I think many times that it's changing so rapidly that even at the HOA level, like it ends up being hard to overcome some of these permit speed bumps you hit.
I'll add that to the list of things that we might want to look at. Thank you.
We have time for one more question, if anyone's interested.
There's a couple people over here.
Oh,
Just to give you your exercise here.
on my way.
Is there an industry group that you're pulling together?
As part of the process. Well, on the manufactured housing, the starting point is the Manufactured Housing Consensus Committee, which is required by law. So I think that's the starting point. They have public meetings.
I'm not very familiar with that. I'm Walter Stender from Silver Creek Modular. Is there anything at the federal level that can be done to consolidate the myriad of regulations that exist between states and counties and cities? So depending upon where you live in this country, you can build building A, and if you live in another area, you can't move a brick without 50 permits.
So in this law, there is a lot of emphasis on the federal government offering best practices to state and local governments so that you would get less of this sort of everything goes kind of thing, and you can get a little more consistency between communities to make it easier for builders to actually meet the standards. So there's definitely a lot of pushing us towards let's identify the best practices, let's push those best practices out there and really strongly encourage communities to pursue those best practices. There's not, this law very respectful of state and local authority. So this is really oriented towards saying, well, the federal government at least can go and figure out what might be best practices and help share it across the country.
In regards to the regulation frustrations as well as barriers right now, the AI industry has recognized that there's an opportunity there to automate a lot of those processes and is working with large manufacturers, large construction, and also government programs to create new services and new products that will, within the next year or two, probably automate all your regulation for you and keep it in a very easy place to consolidate. Make sure that your manufacturers are meeting their requirements, and change as the regulations change and as the different rules change. Some of the AI will be able to keep up with that and dashboard where you're at on all your projects. So the industry itself on the computer side is looking at that, just to address that.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll close with a little joke. Is that okay? Yeah. What piece of clothing sounds like you have a cold? A shoe. There you go. A shoe. Thank you very much.